Hi, I'm Saida Garrett, co-writer of Michael Jackson's Man in the Mirror, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mr. Mark Tara.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the persons appearing on the program.
Today on Rainbow Country, the new gay film, Dicks, the musical, and the new award-winning queer novel, The Maenads' God. That and more on episode 376, so stay tuned for Gay Talk Radio right here on Rainbow Country.
Hi, this is Emily Saliers from Indigo Girls.
Hey everyone, this is Chris Harder, porn star, burlesque performer, and the creator of Porn to Be a Star. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Well, hello and welcome to a brand new journey through Rainbow Country. As I like to call it, a little gay radio show working to give voice to the LGBT community and beyond. And as always, I am your tour guide through Rainbow Country. I'm producer and host, Mark Tara. By the way, Rainbow Country originates from CIUT-FM in Toronto and now proudly in syndication on 12 outlets across Canada, from coast to coast to coast. The Yukon, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, the east coast of Canada in Newfoundland, Ontario, even down to Buffalo, New York, and online. Well, thanks to you tuning in, streaming, downloading, but ultimately listening. Together, we continue to build Rainbow Country into a nationally syndicated gay radio show, a #1 LGBT podcast on Podomatic.com's Gay and Lesbian chart, as well as being recognized as Canada's #1 LGBT podcast on Feedspot.com. So today, I chat with the creators and stars of the new gay comedy musical film, Dicks, the musical, Josh Sharp and Aaron Jackson. Also on this episode, award-winning author Karen Michalson joins me to talk about her latest novel, The Maenads' God, a book that tells a story of murder, mythology, and queer romance. And in hour 2, music from LGBT artists, independent artists, voices that we've come to know and love in classic disco, classic 80s, classic house, and on this episode, I'm featuring some classic funk, some queer alternative, and more. All that lies ahead as we start Journey 376 through Rainbow Country. And first up, what else? Dicks the musical.
This is Craig Tittle.
Thanks, doll.
And this is Trevor Brock.
You have a good day.
My cock is fucking massive. It always leaves the ladies sore.
The money just keeps rolling in. The good times never stop.
There's never been a man like me, and I'll always be on top.
Craig Tittle, Trevor Brock, my two top salesmen. You two motherfuckers look like y'all could be twins.
I think we actually look very dissimilar.
The only thing I have from the dad I never knew is half of a locket. We must be brothers.
Not just brothers, Trevor. Twins!
Wow, we're twins. We're fucking identical twins.
If mom and dad got married again, then we'd have a real family.
What if we trick them into getting back together?
What are you doing here? The twins.
Y'all are just servants. This is my palace, built it brick by brick. So get in the line, drop on your knees, and suck my fucking dick.
Should I open another bottle? I know it's our second, but we're not Baptists.
Should we drown them in the bathtub in the old-fashioned way?
Y'all fucked up.
I'm gay. Queer as a $3 bill and just as thin.
Life's a fucking hand job, and I only play to win.
Oh, God.
Wow, a lady boss. I guess it really is the year that it is.
I'm so sorry. Did you say sewer boys?
Disgusting! They're not disgusting, they're gay culture.
Josh Sharp, Aaron Jackson. Hi, how are the two of you doing?
We're doing well. How are you?
Fabulous.
I am well. Thank you both for being here to have your voices, your story be heard by the LGBT community and beyond. So
well, it's good to be here in Canada.
Yes, yes, across Canada on radio. Okay, so what I'm about to say to you is the exact same thing that I said to Oscar-winning stunt coordinator who did a little film called Ford v. Ferrari, Robert Nagel. He was on the show, and I said to him what I'm about to say to you. I saw your film, and I have to say I did not like your film. I did not like it. I loved your film. I laughed, I cried, I ruined my makeup, I laughed, and I laughed. Well done on...
I hope it wasn't expensive makeup, Mark. I feel bad.
Drugstore girl, okay?
Oh,
drugstore brand.
Good. This is a film for drugstore girls, honestly. If you've got drugstore makeup, this is the movie for you.
Get you to the theater.
Congrats on making such an entertaining, award-winning film. Here's my first question to you, Josh. Sewer boys. What are sewer boys?
Well, we cast them. They're actors that we found who we thought would just be brilliant in the role. So you'll have to speak of them, really. No, that was like we originally were doing this as a 2-man stage show years ago that was at the UCB Theater in the basement of a grocery store. So it was very, crazy and lo-fi. And that was just like a joke we mentioned where it was just funny to us that this fabulous gay man would think they were a part of gay culture when they're obviously not. But then when we were doing the movie, we were like, well, we have to see them. Plus, we love some of those 80s movies like, Gremlins and Labyrinth and Dark Crystal and puppets. So we were like, we want them to be horrific little puppets. So, without giving away too much, I do think they are the breakout stars of the film.
So Aaron, if you can talk to me about, and to the audience, essentially the story that you're telling in Dix the Musical.
The story that we're telling, well, it's sort of a riff on The Parent Trap, the Haley Mills or Lindsay Lohan property, depending on your worldview. And except instead of precious little girls trying to get their parents back together, it is grown, horrible, self-centered men. And then instead of their parents being these lovely, marvelous, perfect people, their parents are also disgusting, strange eccentrics. So it's just sort of like the wrong people are in a very cute, family-friendly musical. And they just are sort of debasing it with every word and every gesture.
And also, it's a musical.
Yeah, and it's a musical.
I know, well done.
That wasn't straightforward enough. Oh, God, Mark, thank you.
So this goes back, you were saying, over 10 years being done in a basement theater. I believe even Bowen Yang would come to see those performances.
Yeah.
He's in this film. So here's the question that I'm interested in knowing, which is the origins. What sparked this musical play back in the day? Where did this all come from?
Quite honestly, we were thinking about wanting to do a 2-man musical. And we were like, if you do The Parent Trap, it's a lot of 2-person scenes because each girl meets each other and then one meets one parent. So like all great art, it was born out of logistics. But it was more just, The Parent Trap now is sort of like the Odyssey or Romeo and Juliet. It's one of those story structures we all know. So it was fun to like take it and sort of break it apart and turn it into a runaway train.
So, Aaron, this is a play. It's now a film. Are there differences between the two? Or is it a straight adaptation?
The play was more of a sketch show, and it was only 30 minutes. So we have added about an hour onto it. But it definitely maintains the same spirit of very meta, very let's put on a show, very absurdist, very joke-a-line, very, as Josh said, runaway train. We always want to feel like, want the audience to feel like we are laying the track in front of the train while it is going full steam ahead and wonder are we going to get the track laid in time, or are we going off a bridge? So it maintained that spirit, but we just got to add songs, add scenes, add characters, and just sort of deepen with it and play with it more. But it's definitely the same vibe.
And having Nathan Lane, and we wanted him back in the two-man show days, but he called out every night.
Yeah,
so
we were the understudies.
Alone.
I was Megan's understudy, and Josh was Nathan's, and they called out every night.
So you have the play, you have the movie, and you have a great cast in the film. Nathan Lane, you got Megan Mullally, you've got Megan Thee Stallion, you've got Bowen Yang. How involved were you guys in the casting process, Josh? How involved were you guys involved?
Blessedly, everything with A24 is like so sort of small, and you have a lot of creative control. So it really was just like us and a producer and Larry who were like figuring out all this casting stuff. And it sounds pat to say, but it's true that every single person was our first choice. I mean, Bowen's like an old friend, and we'd sort of always envisioned him as that part. And then for the parents, we wanted people who were like phenomenally funny and also could really sing and also would get this very specific stylized gonzo absurdist thing. So once you whittled that down, we were like, there's really only two humans left, and it's Nathan Lane and Megan Mullally. So we were like thrilled they both said yes. And then Megan Thee Stallion, because her part is like a little smaller and she has one big number, we knew it was like, okay, we could dream big and ask like sort of a big person to do it. So let's like try it and ask someone who we think there's no chance in hell they'll say yes. But it's like, we might as well waste our ask on a no. And we asked her first, and then she did say yes. So sort of truly everybody was like the dream first choice for us. So we were pinching ourselves, Mark.
Yeah.
Aaron, how did you guys originally meet?
Josh and I originally met at the UCB Upright Citizens Brigade Theater through our friend Langan Kingsley. She introduced us, and we'd met at the bar, and it, just like really briefly, but really how we sort of became friends was in that era. You just kind of just put anything up on stage. It didn't really matter. It was extremely low stakes and high risk, low reward. But Josh and I and our friend Langan we decided to do improv together one night at like midnight or something. And I was watching Josh perform, and I'd never really seen him perform, had just met him a couple times and thought he was nice, but then it was like, oh, he's really fucking funny. Sorry for swearing. And then he, I think, thought the same about me. And then we just sort of really just started hitting it off. So it really was a relationship kind of forged in performance, which is a very unique way to meet someone. And it's kind of like a very special... when you find that you have that on-stage chemistry and then it bleeds into real life, I don't know, that's very, very rare and very fun to find. Again,
I sound like a broken record. A play, now a movie. Is the next step going back to a play, a musical on Broadway?
I think it's a new land at Disney World. I think we should have a whole new
Dick's the musical land.
I think that's the obvious next step, Mark.
The Sewer Boy ride would be good.
The Sewer Boy ride would be really good. No, we'll do it on up Broadway, Mark, if you'll produce. I think you're just the guy.
I can't even produce my life.
Yeah, truly.
That's what we need.
Apparently at the premiere in LA, there was a British woman who went up to Nathan Lane and said, "You must take this to the West End." And he goes, "Must we?"
But do you think that this is a logical next step, though?
Well, in all
seriousness,
I mean, it is a musical, and it was started on stage. It definitely is, as people often say in the reviews, we're playing for the back row. So I think, if someone wants to produce it, why the hell not?
From your lips to God's ears.
But let's make it a big hit movie first, Mark.
Yeah, exactly.
You're getting ahead of ourselves. We're doing press for the film here. We need tickets and seats,
Okay, so the Toronto International Film Festival 2023 People's Choice Midnight Madness Award, and the winner is Dick's the Musical. Congrats on that. When you got that award, what went through your mind?
Well, I wept for an hour.
Well, we were really so honored and excited
shocked.
because that this had been in our heads for so long. Yes, and we made it for people. Like, again, I thought we were going to have a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes because I thought critics would just hate it. But we were like, I hope people like it. And then the people did. And I mean, we had such stiff competition. There were so many amazing movies at the festival. So we were just ecstatic. And that meant so much to us. And to be embraced by the festival and embraced by Toronto, we were very touched.
And we were already sort of shocked this movie got made because it really was a thing we just made to make the two of us laugh. It's like felt very like specific and unique. And so then, first of all, getting all this incredible talent on board and even all the like crew and designers and like wildly talented people who were like, I agree with you. This crazy idea is funny was already the stage of like, I guess people like it. So then like it being out and going that way, it was a dream, and it was so fun to screen in Toronto. The crowd was like rowdy and got it. So we loved getting to show it in Canada.
I will say you have a lot in this film. The one thing that I thought would have been perfect in this film was just, a little hit of poppers.
Yeah, definitely. We always tell people to have a cocktail, but definitely bring your double Scorpio also to the theater. Pass it around.
Bring your rush.
Share with the class.
So here's my last question for the two of you.
Which brand of poppers do we like? That's been the usual final question from all the press.
Jungle Juice is fine in a pinch.
Aaron, I'll start with yourself. What do you hope audiences come away with after they've seen Dix the Musical?
I mean, I want people to have like a wonderful time, and I want people to laugh. I want people to just like that is what I truly hope, is that we make people laugh. But I hope people are excited by how this movie is not trying to be another movie. This movie is not trying to please everyone. And I hope people are excited by like a unique, bizarro movie making it to the screen, and just that it's like a party.
Yeah, and we've already, it's been out in New York at least for like 2 weeks, and we did a Q&A screening the other weekend, and there are already people coming up who've like, I've seen it 3 times. And it is a fun film if it resonates with you. It's fun to see in a crowd. So the idea that you can like tell all the nasty girls, that you want to go back. So I think we just hope that it gets people excited to go to a movie theater and like laugh and scream together.
Maybe the birth of a cult classic.
And a $1 billion global hit like Barbie. I think that's the obvious answer. And then a cult classic a little after.
Yeah.
I have to say, Josh, Aaron, thank you both for your time. Well said, well done, well made. An excellent film. You. Thanks for being on the show.
Well, Mark, let me just say something to you. I didn't like this interview. I loved this interview.
Well, thank you.
Do you understand?
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
This is Craig Tittle.
Thanks, doll.
And this is Trevor Brock.
You have a good day. My cock is fucking massive. It always leaves the ladies sore.
The money just keeps rolling in. The good times never stop.
There's never been a man like me, and I'll always be on top.
Craig Tittle, Trevor Brock, my 2 top salesmen. You 2 motherfuckers look like y'all could be twins.
I think we actually look very dissimilar.
The only thing I have from the dad I never knew is half of a locket. We must be brothers.
Not just brothers, Trevor.
Twins. Wow, we're twins. We're fucking identical twins.
If mom and dad got married again, then we'd have a real family.
What if we trick them into getting back together?
What are you doing here?
The twins.
Y'all are just servants. This is my palace, built it brick by brick. So get in the line, drop on your knees, and suck my fucking dick.
Should I open another bottle? I know it's our second, but we're not Baptists.
Should we drown them in the bathtub in the old-fashioned way?
Y'all fucked up.
I'm gay. Queer as a $3 bill and just as thin.
Life's a fucking hand job, and I only play to win.
Oh, God.
Wow, a lady boss. I guess it really is the year that it is.
I'm so sorry. Did you say sewer boys?
Disgusting. They're not disgusting. They're gay culture.
Dix the musical is out right now in theaters.
Hi, everybody. This is Gino Vanelli. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Up next, the Maenads' God.
I kept looking at him, at his words and dark hair and smiling dark eyes and arrestingly classical features, trying to know who he was right now. I kept seeing his performances and hearing all his poetry and his music. Bass lines, lines of poetry. The ancients didn't separate poetry from music. Anyone touched or tainted with enough divinity to do one did both, because there wasn't a both. There was only the compulsion of verse. Didn't verse once mean a turning into? Wasn't the first act of creation the universe, meaning the one turning into, as in God turning itself into everything it wanted? As in poets turning one line into another, one section of music into the next, or the artist turning your own emptied life into whatever you wanted to be before the world? Make me a hero so I can speak freely. I'll pay you with applause. He belonged to another line, to the scattered procession of Dionysus's heedlessly illegitimate children, like passion flowers lurking out of the mad corners of old centuries, who for all their divine pretense couldn't be anything other than what they were, who could do nothing but strum lutes and mandolins and bass guitars and chant prose poems to keep misfits awake and dreaming for generations. What was it like to be so helplessly powerful with an energy, so attractive it keeps pulsing in open hearts through centuries? He was closer to the words I read at night than to me. That alone made me know he was already closer to me than my own words. I gazed across the quiet water, bird in the distance like a lost sea pigeon, then gone. I knew I had some power here. It was entirely up to me whether I saw him again. He would come to New England and perform, but I needn't insist he visit me when he came. I could go home, go back to the drug war, see the McCrae case to its end, and there an end. I could say what I wanted to say, get in my car, make the long trip home right now. I would feel foolish, maybe even sick. I would be afraid of my own dreams for a while, and music would make me feel desolate. But at least I would know for the rest of my life that I had said it, that I was once moved enough to say it. If I needed to, I could always pretend that this conversation never happened and comfort myself in knowing that no one would ever have to know how deeply the pretending cut. Thought of all the books I'd read on fall days because the stories were better than anything I found in life. Hated the betrayal when the books ended. Needed the fiction to get through the social hypocrisy that tore me apart every day. Hated the need. Knew I would hate myself worse if I didn't have the need. Felt the same surge I'd only felt once before in my life, when a suspect caused me to make a snap decision and shoot to kill. Knew I was likely killing again. That I was risking the remnant of my true self that had somehow evaded society's jackboots. I love you. Done. I'd never found anybody I could honestly say that to before. Anybody I could honestly imagine enough to love. He was a painting, a myth, a melody that wouldn't stop. Loved the way the bard sang about it. A last chance at belief before the absolute horror of nothing set in for the rest of my life. More cold and deadly than the deadly contrast of this moment. I'd said my prayer. Please, God, have mercy. Don't say you don't exist. Cool. I love you too.
Karen Michalson. Hi, how are you?
Hi, how are you, Mark? It's good to be here.
Well, I am well. I have to say thank you for being here. To have your voice, your story be heard by the LGBT community and beyond, especially to talk about your latest book, an award-winning book, the Maenads God, the title. I want to start there because the word Maynard, and I'm assuming I'm saying it correctly, please, correct me if I'm wrong, but talk to me about that word and what that word means, Maynard.
There's a few ways to pronounce it. A lot of people say Maenad, and I'm not sure that's even completely correct. I think there's a purist academic way, something like the Maenad. But what matters is the Maenads god is a phrase that's been used by scholars and academics for a long time to describe the ancient Greek deity Dionysus. And Dionysian frenzy, hallucinations, his myth cycle, the way he's perceived and his ways of being are very much, what I want to say, they're a trope that's very strong in this book. One of the characters, his name is Jade, is a bass player in a rock band. And there's almost, I don't want to call it a cliche, but maybe within rock circles, it's more of a cliche that the Dionysus is the deity that presides over hard rock music, and Maenads that is sort of the energy that presides over perhaps groupies or fans or whatever. So Jade is the Maenads god, but there's a phrase in there in which one of his admirers, who's having a hard time, I don't want to give too many spoilers away, thinks of herself as being very important because she symbolizes the audience. And without the audience, he's nothing, right? And she says something to the effect of, Jade might be the Maenads god, but sometimes the Maenads god, meaning sometimes it's her who she says she symbolizes the audience. So it's really just a tip of the hat to Dionysian mythology.
Why did you choose this particular title for this book?
Well, as I said, it came out of wordplay in the middle of the book. And while I was writing that, I'm like, that makes sense as a title. I didn't really have a title until I fell into that dialogue. It's both about, it's about him, it's about power, it's about art and creativity as spirituality, number one. And that's very much something from the Dionysian side of the universe. But it's also about the way people react to it. And that's why the Maenad is God sometimes.
So talk to... Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm finished. Go ahead, Mark.
So talk to me about the story that you are telling within the pages of the Maenads God. What's the story all about?
Okay, so it's Boston. It's 1992. And there's this alienated, cynical FBI agent named Pete Morrow. And Pete is really, how can I say it? He's not just a misanthrope. He's just alienated because as an agent, he has seen a cesspool of life. Everything is terrible. He just has seen the worst. He really doesn't like people very much. His only escape is through literature, art, and music. One day his boss sends him to warn away a drug dealer on this obscure army base that's kind of a mysterious base in itself. It's not really clear what's happening there, what's going on. And he discovers a murder, and it's a very strange murder. The base commander has been ripped to pieces and his torso has been filled with rock and roll memorabilia. And then he sees a rock band that's performing at the officers club, and he becomes obsessed with the bass player, who happens to be from Toronto. And the rock band that performs, Pete doesn't really know what to do with his feelings because he has been so alienated. He's never been in love before with anybody. And he doesn't at first even understand himself is being loved or being obsessed. He just knows he's thinking about this guy all the time and can't get him out of his mind. And this grows to a relationship between the two throughout the novel. And one of the point of tensions there is that there's a mafia family investigating Jade's band, and Pete's investigating this family. So they have to be very, very secret about that. They could both get killed if they were ever found out. The other point of tension is to do with creativity. Jade is almost magical. He embodies myth. He embodies stories. He's kind of a Dionysian figure. And in some sense, and this comes through the novel, even his mother talks about him in this way. there's a claim that his father was Dionysus. Well, I'm thinking, when I'm writing this, I'm thinking about the Iliad, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners, I'm sure you're aware that in the Iliad, whenever there were really powerful warriors or powerful people or people that just had a talent that was a little extraordinary, the ancients often thought of that person as being half divine. And whether that was literal, whether that was figurative, whether that was a jokey myth, I think maybe that's been lost in the mist of time. But that was what I was playing with. So what Jade does for Pete is he creates these living fantasies, these myths, these stories, these songs, and he really heals him. He brings him out from his separation from humanity. And one of the many questions the novel asks is, this is a novel about divinity. I mean, if you hate people, but you fall in love with somebody who maybe is partly divine, maybe, kind of, sort of, what does it mean? What is it like to encounter divinity? What is that all about? And that feeds into the central point of tension, which is the real point of the book. I think there is a war going on today between creativity and entropy. And not just today. It's been going on for centuries. And a lot of us, like Peter, caught in the middle of it. So I've talked a lot here.
But that's what we're here for, to find out, right? To get to know. Toronto. So. Why Toronto?
Well, that's interesting.
Because this is coming from your imagination, from your mind. So why Toronto in particular for this character?
It is. And the first thing I'm going to say is, I'm American because I pronounce the second T.
Oh, Toronto. Yes.
Toronto. Toronto. Okay. Here's what happened. This is where the book came from. And I was writing another book, and I may have finished at the end. This was the original version of Maenads came in the 90s, and I recently reworked it and stuff. I couldn't get this figure out of my mind. And it was like, when you remember things, they feel differently in your brain than when you imagine things. And at the time, I guess I was pretty sensitive to, like, when a character comes to me or something like this is a character. And the character I kept saying was somebody who was sitting on the floor playing a 4-stringed instrument. And the other thing I got is this guy's Canadian. And I knew nothing about anything at that point. I didn't even play music at that point. And I had to do research. I'm like, if you're Canadian and you're a musician and you're trying to make it, you're probably in Toronto or Vancouver. So that's where that came from. That was a total guess. And from there, I did a lot of research into the city. And I have to say, as I was writing the book and writing certain scenes in Toronto, I really began to fall in love with the city before I ever went there. It just seemed to, I don't know, maybe the act of fiction writing is an act of connection to things you've never seen before. But it also planted a seed in me with a lifelong love of Canada.
Mm. So you have a background in music, in touring, in being a record distributor. Did you ever tour Toronto? Did you ever play in Toronto?
No, I have never played in Toronto. Back when I wrote the book, I needed to do a lot of research to write this character because, as I said, I didn't play music at that point. In fact, I had to ask my spouse what this is because I knew he played guitar when he was very young, and then he went on to other things for a while. And he says, "Oh yeah, that sounds like a bass guitar." And I'm like, "What's that?" Now, at the time, and still true, I listen to music all the time, like a lot of people do, but I couldn't have told you like what a bass guitar was, what position it occupies in a song, anything. And I just said, I need to learn about this. If I'm going to write about this character, I need to know what he feels like. What does it feel like to hold a bass? What does it feel like to walk with one? Is it hard to learn? And I thought that might be a little bit of a steep endeavor for me, but he took me out to a club. We were watching a band and the club was playing blues and some 50s songs. And he said, "That's a bass." I'm like, "That's the instrument." And I just made it a mission to learn everything I could about the instrument. And then he picked his guitar back up again. And then that at that point, I just got involved in music, and the phrase that I have been using is, I felt like an embedded reporter. Like I played in a few bands before we formed our own, and I just was doing that to study how other people were with each other. Because as a writer, that interests me very much. And I learned within bands, people usually don't get along very well. Ego is a thing.
Indeed.
There's a lot of destructiveness in music that I didn't expect to encounter. And I also learned a lot of the high points of it. And one thing that became very clear to me was I began to appreciate music for its own sake. And it was in that context that we began to tour in the U.S. And by tour, I mean, we did our own. We would set up gigs in various parts of the country, out west, North Dakota, California, and then we would just travel and do them. So that's what we did. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but no, I've never played in Canada.
Okay, so a 1990s Boston, an FBI agent, Pete Morrow, a murder mystery, a mafia-backed rock musician, Jade McClellan, a secret romance, a queer romance. The Maenads' God is a top-ranking book on Amazon's best-selling list for LGBTQ plus thrillers. Talk to me about why having queer representation in this novel, why this was important for you to include this, because you're the creator of this, you're the author. This didn't necessarily have to be. So why was this important for you to have queer representation within the Maenads' God?
Well, I would argue it didn't necessarily have to be, in the sense that these are who the characters were. And when I write,
didn't you create the characters?
They come to me. It's a weird thing, but
they come to you.
Well, I know that sounds strange.
No, it doesn't, because a lot of authors have said to me that, not all, but some have said to me that characters will come to them and they will inspire them and lead them along the path in telling their particular story.
Exactly. And I felt that way with the books I had written previously. In the trilogy that I wrote, a fantasy trilogy, I had another mental image of these two characters. And when I'm at my best, and I'm not at my best all the time, I'm following the characters. And this is who they are. I mean, I didn't question any of it. This is just them. So I can tell you, I had to do a lot of research also, because it's not like, everything about their lives. I mean, originally I thought Jade was going to be the main character. I really did. And when I started writing, I kept writing in the voice of an FBI agent. And that meant a whole bunch of research on that end that I had to do. I mean, I knew Pete was working for the government. I knew he worked in Boston. I went to Boston. I went up to the field office. I looked around. I read books on the FBI. I read books on the mafia and the music business. And the more I imagined his life, the more he did things. So a lot of this was following Pete and following him moving from, I guess today you'd call him an ace. I mean, he was not connected to anyone and didn't want to be, falling in love. And then, finding out that the man he's in love with is on the other side of this whole mafia thing, and they better be quiet about it. And also this, this point of tension that he's in between this cosmic war, because for centuries there's been these forces of entropy that want to bring him or bring anybody that's creative or thinks for themselves down into the primeval ooze kind of, that's a metaphor that's in the book. It's not literal in the book. And on the other side is creativity. And Jade is working with, he's these cousins and these families that, claim to have some connection throughout the centuries with pushing art and creativity. And here's Pete in the middle. He loves art because it presents an alternate world for him where he can escape this dirty reality he's in. And on the other hand, he's got to kind of fight these other forces. And the worst part of the thing that happens is one of the forces of entropy shows up at the FBI office and is maybe working with the mob, maybe not. So he's like caught between a lot of different things. And Jade doesn't make it easy on him. Jade's a Dionysian. He doesn't care. He's chaos, you know?
So for yourself as an author, someone who writes in mythology, in magic, why do you think you're drawn to these particular topics?
I think there is a...
Do you believe in magic in the real world, in today?
I believe that art is magic. I believe that writing is magic. I believe creativity is spirituality. And I'm not going to shy away from that. I think there is nothing more spiritual than taking a blank page and creating a world on it. Or taking,
what's that?
Taking a stringed instrument or any instrument and creating a world with it. Making something live that hasn't lived before and didn't exist before. That's spiritual. That, to me, that is. And I think that if you look at where art comes from and where music comes from specifically, go back to the Neolithic, go back way, way back. And anthropologists know by studying even modern day Stone Age peoples, that people looked at music and stories not just as entertainment, but as a spiritual thing, as a form of healing, as a way that they got in touch with what they would call or believe in as gods. And I think we lose a lot of that today. I think art should be numinous. It should bring you into another space. And I know that the best, the best is not fair, but the most compelling experiences I've had looking at painting, listening to music is when I feel like I've been brought into another space. So that's magic to me.
When you're writing, when you're creating something, whether it's this book or another book or what have you, do you have a ritual, certain things that you do, maybe a certain time of day where you sit down to write? Do you have a certain ritual for yourself when you're starting a new project?
I close my door. I drink a lot of coffee. I like stimulation. I just have to make sure I'm in a place that's quiet. And sometimes, I need to quiet down my mind and focus on just that. But that's pretty typical, I think. Most of us need that.
And on that note, we'll return right after this.
Hi, this is Michael Anthony Alago, music executive, photographer, author, and you are listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Hitmakers is a full-service, award-winning record label and social enterprise based in Iqaluit, Nunavut. We specialize in the creating and marketing of world-class Inuit and Indigenous music, including pop, hip-hop, rock, folk, and traditional Inuit music. Hitmakers has studios in Iqaluit, Ottawa, and Toronto. The label currently works with more than 20 Inuit and Indigenous artists, and we represent and promote many more. The company was founded in 2016, and our mission is to create viable careers in the arts for Inuit and Indigenous artists through music, media, and education. Our secondary mission is to empower artists to share and strengthen their stories and culture. To learn more, please connect with us on social media or at hitmakers.com. That's Hitmakers with a Z. Thanks for listening.
When did gay pride become just pride?
I can answer that for you, and I can answer what a big turnaround was, and it's a very simple thing. Corporatism is when gay pride became pride. As soon as we got corporate sponsors, as soon as we had the approval of the corporations around us, oh my God, the beer company's going to sponsor it and they're going to give us a float, and look at the telephone company's going to do something and someone else is going to do something.
But drop the gay.
Yeah, drop the gay
Yep.
and include everyone. And I always thought, why should we include everyone? This is a gay pride celebration. It is for people who are in a sexual minority.
Yep.
We had something that was for us to make people recognize who we are and to acknowledge that we actually existed.
Award-winning playwright and author Brad Fraser reflects on some important gay history. The time frame, the 1990s. When gay pride becomes pride, with the introduction of corporate sponsorships.
Hi, my name is Joanne Vanicola, and I'm an actor and a writer, and I was first on Rainbow Country with Mark Tara on discussing the massacre at Pulse Club in Orlando. I realized how important it was for our community to have a radio station, specifically for our issues, to talk about people in the LGBTQ community and to provide an outlet for our stories, to discuss our politics, culture, and give voice to the issues that matter to us. And of course our artists and the things that we do globally and talk about culture. And without people like Mark Tara providing a space for this with a radio show like this, then we wouldn't have that voice. So support, tune in. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Paul Poirier, Canadian champion in ice dance and 3-time Olympian, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
So Karen Michalson, you have been a criminal defense attorney, an educator, a record distributor, a musician, an author. You feel most comfortable doing what?
I have to think about that. Probably, I mean, what I enjoy the most is writing and being on the page. Mm-hmm. But I feel most comfortable working at home and being in control of what I'm doing and making my own creative decisions. I was at one point traditionally published, and I like being on my own in writing things the way I feel that I want them to be written. And I guess I would say that. I guess when I'm working by myself in my room with the door closed, when it's just me and the page, that's when I'm the most comfortable.
Mm-hmm. You recently received the Historical Fiction Company's Highly Recommended Award of Excellence. Highly Recommended Award of Excellence. What went through your mind when you got that news?
That I wrote a novel in the 90s and it's historical now. It's through my mind.
We lived through that.
Yes, exactly.
And now that's history? Come on.
Yes, apparently it is. It's late 20th century American history. And to be fair, American and Canadian history. I did include a lot of references to Canadian culture and history in the book. But yeah, it's weird because there are certainly a whole generation of people, and maybe more than one generation at this point, who look at the 90s as history. I mean, the book ends maybe 6 months before the World Wide Web goes wide. So all the technology in the book is clunky physical technology. It's tape recorders you put in your pocket, it's VCR tapes you shove in. It's computers aren't as prevalent in the home as they once were. I mean, Pete has email at work, but it's really clunky email and it's really easy to hack. And at home, he's got a physical landline. But we lived through that, and it doesn't feel historical, but it is. It's kind of almost like we're in 2023 here, looking at another world. And one thing I hope people do get from the book is Pete and his alienation today would be normal. I mean, like we could chat through a screen, but we don't necessarily see each other. And a lot of our relationships are through computers. I mean, we don't really spend a lot of time face to face with each other often in today's society. In 93, Pete is more of an anomaly because he shut himself off. So he's almost like us in the 90s. We can kind of relate to him as a point that's similar to who we are. But yeah, it's historical.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about that, the things that we've lived through. Like you were saying, VCRs, fax machines, Walkmans, all that sort of stuff. Fascinating to think of that as history. But it's just our past, right?
Right. And streaming music isn't a thing. It doesn't even exist yet. So the mafia gets people on the radio kind of. I mean, it is very historical in that way.
Writing and music. Did you always want to be a writer or a musician or anything like that when you were growing up?
I didn't want to be a musician. That came out of this book.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that book changed my life in that way.
Mm-hmm. Back in the 90s.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. As to writer, I used to read constantly, but I'm not sure I knew what I wanted to do. But I loved books and I read them constantly. And then when I got into college, I thought I'd like to be a literary critic. So I went to school for that, and I went through grad school, and I was teaching at the University of Connecticut for a while. And when I started writing my first book of fiction, that grabbed me. But I was having spent my 20s going through school. I was probably almost 30 when I wrote my first book of fiction, and it's just like it hit me. I don't know how to explain it, and it hadn't hit me earlier. So no. The answer is no. I didn't want to be either one when I was younger.
Rock band fiction. Is it fair to say that the Maenads' God might be considered rock band fiction?
Absolutely fair. Some critics said it was something, to him it was like Brokeback Mountain meets Daisy and the Six. And I don't know. I don't know about that. But yeah, I think it could be rock band fiction. I mean, the whole thing is a love song to rock and roll. It's like the middle of the novel, there's this huge discourse. One of the characters is talking about the history of rock, and she takes it back to Africa and the early, Neolithic rhythms, and how they, were spread across the world and then came over in the slave ships and the Mississippi blues and doo-wop and the 50s and Chuck Berry. And she has this whole thing, and she speaks of it as if the story itself is a legend, as if the story itself is a kind of mythology, but also true. Like it's both. And there's this, to me, there's a mystic edge to rock music. Even before I even thought about playing an instrument, it's hallucinogenic. You see visions. It makes you feel things. For myself, when I wrote earlier books in Maynard before I played, I always had like really loud music blasting because it helped me visualize. There's a magic in it. There's a power in it. So I hope that answers your question.
Do you have a favorite band?
I own so many favorite bands. So I don't know.
A favorite song?
I can do a whole list. Sure. I love classic rock. And I like Pink Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
I love Jethro Tull. I'm kind of like from that side of the spectrum. Let me think. Dream Theater, all of those.
I love the Eagles and Steve Miller, the Steve Miller Band.
Oh, yeah? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so chosen by Independent Book Review as one of the best books of 2022, The Maenads' God. Congrats on that. Here's my last question for you. What do you hope audiences come away with? What do you hope audiences take away from this novel, The Maenads' God?
I hope there are no answers in it, but I hope it gives them a perspective on, to the degree that we're all creative people. We all have a life inside, and that life gets squelched and destroyed by society. This happens to Pete. And every day, every one of us is in this war between creativity and entropy. And we're always fighting this war. And a lot of us lose to it. A lot of us get told who we are, what we have to do, how we have to be. And this struggle that we all go through, in which Jade tries to strengthen Pete and to an extent succeeds, although the novel ends in a rather dark place, Pete is kind of an everyman that stands in for all of us. And I hope it just raises discussions and questions about this tension between creativity and entropy. And at the moment, I think entropy's winning. I mean, we're all kind of all forced to live our lives like a computer algorithm. We're all forced to, even in our work, we're sometimes forced to not even think for ourselves, but to just go through step by step by step and not go outside of that. So I hope people do get that out of the book. And I hope they just, you talked about magic. I hope they get a vision out of the book of reality having that magic and mythic edge, because if you look for it, it's there.
Well said, well said. Karen Michalson, thank you so much for your time. Well said, well done, well written. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much. It's been really enjoyable. Thank you for having your show. But the band wasn't trying to lose me or bring me in. I was there, and they were there, and Jade seemed quietly all right with it. So the rest of them were. Item. No one offered me information on the Rome murder or anything else, and I didn't ask, because I couldn't bring myself to trespass against the sacredness of our communion. It was a natural coming together for a night. My first. Marty kept passing bottles around to wild pledges. We drank to the CN Tower. We drank to Queen's Park as we sat passing stories under a tree there like Canterbury pilgrims flying at a verbal jam session. Les told tales of Juilliard. They used to put razor blades between the piano keys to encourage accuracy in playing. Did it work? Sometimes, he said dryly. We made up glary nursery rhymes. We drank to the Queen. We drank on the steps of the Parliament building under gracious arches that looked like the facade of another century. And Jade was moving pictures through words and beer, and we were all doing our drunken best to help. I don't remember the pictures, but one had fire and burned when we spoke it. We were a shadow government holding court and trying the night. Innocent and dark as stars turning out into space. No one could touch the little circle of our feeling. We called down storms and pretended to see them. And then we ran loose all over the city, and at one point it rained, and we drank to the Royal Ontario Museum. Or maybe that was Sunday, and we took shelter in the museum's planetarium where the rain scorched the roof, and so made the sound of whatever the universe constantly expands into. We sang old songs. And then we drank to the Arctic plain of Canada, stretching into the planet's empty night. I don't know where we went and where we were. The afternoon was spare and gray except for us. The city was kind. I think we ate. I think I paid. The night came again all moony before I left. We walked through dreams and sang. Marty displayed his insanity without apology, and Les kept trying to get me lost in logical propositions that resolved themselves in dry-witted jokes, and Xander kept shadowboxing with visions in the air, and Jade was simply with me more often than not, keeping the spirit of everything I ever wanted, holding and intense.
The Maenads God is out right now. And on Amazon.ca, the book has a rating of 4 out of 5 stars. For even more on this award-winning author, simply visit KarenMichalson.com.
Bill 7, to ban discrimination in employment, government services, and housing, based on a person's sexual orientation, was up for a vote at Queen's Park. Most NDP and Liberal MPPs supported the bill, but without some progressive Conservative legislators' backing, a divisive split could rack the province. 4 PCs decided to break party ranks to vote with their conscience and support Bill 7. Cabinet Minister and MPP Dennis Timbrell did it to show solidarity for his beloved brother, the well-known drag queen Rusty Ryan. And for me, a gay politician who was not yet out, I had to take a stand. We were known as the Gang of Four. I'm former Cabinet Minister and MPP Phil Gillies. The date, December 2nd, 1986, when LGBT rights came to Ontario.
And just like that, this little gay journey through Rainbow Country has come to an end. For the full 2-hour episode, simply head over to marktara.com where everything is connected and hit the archives banner. To keep up to date with the show, check out my socials at Mark Tara. The edited podcast version of Rainbow Country is available on all major platforms. And finally, I want to take this time to thank you for taking your time to be with me. Remember, we live in days of making dreams come true. So believe in yourself, and the world will believe in you.
Hi, this is Police Constable Danielle Botno, also known as LGBT Cop, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.